Alright, in this video we are going to show how to take this center design here and replace it with some different rings, with some double rings instead of the single rings. We'll do it a couple different ways to show a couple different ways to do it, and also the first time we'll actually just replace the whole design. Then the second time I think we'll keep the flowers. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll just make a copy. So I'm going to select everything here that I want to keep, drag down. I hold control while I'm dragging so it stays in line, and then I right click to get it to show my plus sign, and then I let go of the left click so that it makes a copy. That way I can mess with my copy and not worry about the original, since I know I'm going to be doing some more stuff later. Okay, so the first thing that I'll do, I'm going to actually combine the frosted area to the polish. So I selected that. I'm holding down shift and I'm clicking on the black so that I can select both of those, and then I'll hit combine. That combines those all together. Okay, so then I can come in here and use my pick tool. A couple different things we can do. I mean, I could just erase all these nodes, and you'll see what happens here. Goes a little bit crazy, but that's okay. All I'd have to do is add in another node here. I don't even have to do that. I'll just click on the line itself, and that gives you that black dot, and then hit delete. And that will delete that whole line segment. And then we'll do the same thing here. Anywhere on that line, I'll just click on it and hit delete. That will delete the line segment. And I'll zoom back in. And if I select this node and this node over here, I should be able to just highlight those, and then I can hit this button here that will extend those to close them. And then I'll do the same thing down here just to make sure that those two close in. So I'll extend that to close. So now if we zoom back in, and if I go to the wireframe, you can see that it actually has a new line there. So I just created a new straight line. That got rid of everything. And then I'll actually move this text down. It's attached to this line here, so what I'd have to do is select that line, go up to Object and say Break Text Apart. That will give me the text separated from that line because it was fit to that path. And then I can select it, come up to text and say straighten text, and that'll get it back to normal for me. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I'll get this back to being filled, so I just select it and run fill grayscale, and that will fill it back in for me. And I can grab a new set of rings, whatever one I want. Let's just go with this one, and I can pull that one down here. I hold down shift, select the stone, hit C on the keyboard, and that will center it. Actually, that's not what I want to do, because if you noticed, I'll redo. See how that got offset? And I'll undo. Okay, so that's not what I wanted to do. If I want to center that, I'll need to group it first, Control G, then Shift select the stone and hit C to center, and then I can ungroup. So the text, I can either just bring that up, or I'll just retype it since this is already in line. So May 14th, 1978. And that replaces everything in the middle there. I don't really like the look of that, though, so I'm going to get rid of that one. And let's bring this one in. I think that's a little bit better. Once again, Control G to group it, Shift select the stone, hit C to center. Now it's centered. And then I'll ungroup that again so that I can mess with it. The dates are split, but these are already fit to path, so I can just put my cursor in there, and then I hit Control A, which selects all of the text. And then I'll type in May 14th, comma. Do the same thing here. I'll just click inside that so that it gets my text cursor inside, and then I'll Control A and type in 1978. So then I've got my new date typed in there. I also see that now there's more space here, so I may want to nudge those over. If I had my nudge set, let's say to 1/4 of an inch, I could select those and then just hit the right arrow a couple times. That went 4 times. To do the same thing, I'm just going to hold shift here because it'll do a double nudge, and then I only have to do it twice, and that will do it the same distance that Jimmy was moved over. If I also wanted to center this top to bottom, I could go ahead and group that again. I just eyeballed it, but if I wanted to make sure that it was centered, because I can't center to the actual panel, if I were to do that, I could shift select the panel and hit E, but you'll see it goes too far down because it's going off of the bottom here, so I'll undo that. And instead of centering to the panel, I will use quick distribute here, click my top extent, which is that line, click my bottom extent, which is that line, and that will move it. I'll undo and I'll redo. You can actually see didn't move at all, which means that I'm really good at eyeballing things. Right? But if I did, I could move it down, then you'll see quick distribute again, click here, and that'll move it up and down. Okay, then same thing, shift select, make sure it's centered there. Okay, so that's one way. That's deleting everything in the middle. It's just a quick way of doing it. Another way is we could actually cut this piece out. So I'm going to make another copy here so that we've got another one to work with. Same thing, dragging down, holding control so that it stays in line. Right click, let go of the right click, and then let go of the left click. That makes a copy. Alright, so this one, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and combine those together again. Instead of shift selecting, I'm actually going to hit V to go to wireframe, hold down Alt, drag a marquee, and then let go, and anything that's touching that marquee gets selected so that I can combine those. Just showing you a couple different ways of doing this. So I hit V again to go back to my normal view. This time I'm going to use the knife tool. So if I come over here and grab the knife, there's a couple different options. You can make a Bezier curve or a freehand mode or a 2-point line. I'll start with a 2-point line and you'll see what happens. I'll go back to wireframe so you can actually see it. So right here I'm going to make a cut, and right in here I'll make a cut. I'll just do it with one line. So if I click and drag like this, anything that touches that knife gets cut. So it just got cut right there, and again over here. So I can do the same thing, just click and drag, make sure I don't touch the text. I don't want to cut the text, I'm just cutting this. So what that did is it cut this piece right there and there as if I were using a knife to cut through those, and now that piece is completely separated. So I can just pull that out. I may even like doing that better than what we did before where we erased all the nodes. I don't know. No, we'll see. If I zoom into here, what I can do is select these two nodes here and delete those and delete this. So now we've got a curve. There's a couple different ways we can fix that. There's actually more than one node there as well. We can just do an extend. If we select both of those nodes, we can come up here and extend close to curve. Extend curve to close. But that extends with a straight line, which is okay. It's just a small straight line. So a small straight line is not going to matter too much, and I could actually just select these nodes and delete them, and then I could curve that a little bit. So that's one way of doing that. Down here, we'll do it again, and I'll show you a different way. So I can select that, hit delete again, hit delete. So I can take that, and instead I'll come to join curves over here. And I've got a really big gap tolerance, so it's going to automatically fill that in. If I had a tiny gap tolerance, let's just say like 0.01, it's not going to close that because there's too much of a gap there. There's probably 0.09 inches. So I go to 0.09. Still won't, because it's 0.09 away from itself, but if I go up a little bit, then you'll see how it closes that in. So anyway, that's your gap tolerance, and since I'm doing a Bezier curve, it'll actually curve that line instead of doing a straight line, so then you wouldn't even notice it. Once again though, I could take those and just delete them if I wanted. Change the curve just a tiny bit there, but I can delete one of those nodes and keep it the same. Okay, so we'll check this out on the other side. There's lots of different ways to mess with this. Another way is if you double click here to create a node there, double click here to create a node there, so you've got two nodes. Then you could delete everything in between those two nodes, but it went kind of crazy. So that's not a good idea. I have to make that straight first. Then take all those and hit delete, and then it would curve. Let me back that up because I was using keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so I deleted this, and then I turned this into a line. I just hit 1 on the keyboard, and that turned it into a line. That probably would have been smarter to do before instead of deleting. Then I can select those and hit delete, and then it'll clean that curve up for me. Alright, then we can do the same thing here. So that worked out pretty well. So if I just double click here, delete this one, turn it into a line, and then delete this, and it cleans it up pretty well. So now we've got that completely separated from the panel. If I want to turn that panel back into a panel, which I do want to do, there's a couple of different things we can do here as well. If I just click on that and extend this all the way over, I'm holding control so that it constrains it to a straight line or to an angle of, I think it's 15 degrees, sorry. But I'm just dragging that over, and I'll do the same thing over here. Nah, actually I'll show you a different way, so I won't do it that way for the top, or for the bottom. But for the top, I will take that, shift select the other piece, and then just weld them together. End up with a couple extra nodes, but that's okay. You can just select them and hit delete on the keyboard, and it deletes them. So this time I will actually select this line, and I'm just doing this to show you different ways you can do it. So I'll click anywhere on the line itself and hit delete. Same thing over here. Hit delete. Now we can do what we did before, where we selected those two nodes and just applied join curves. We wouldn't want to do a Bezier curve on this one. Probably we'd do an extend, and we'd have to make it a really big gap, so like 15 inches or something, and hit apply, and then it would fix it for us. But that takes a little bit more work than I was hoping for, so let's get rid of these nodes here. So if I just select both of those nodes, I can come up here and hit join two nodes, because they're straight. They're just going to join in the middle. So if I hit that or hit J on the keyboard, you'll see that it just brought them together in the middle and joined them. So then I can select that and hit delete, and it'll delete that node. Going back, hitting V, I can now fill in my panel if I want to. Supposed to be able to fill in my panel. I think this text is probably throwing off the fill panel script, so because it's attached to that curve. So we'll try it again without that text getting in the way. Let's just go ahead and select all of this here and fill panel. Fill grayscale. Yeah, so that text was messing up with my fill grayscale because it was inside that. So we don't want to do that. Okay, but then we can take this piece, and we could do the same thing. We could just do fill grayscale on there, and that would fill it in. Okay, so now that we've filled that, we could just reselect it, sorry, and shift page up will bring it to the front of the stack, and then we can decide what we want to do. So if we wanted to keep the flowers and nothing else, I guess I could have done this before, but we'll select the frosted area and come up to Object and say Break Curve Apart, or Control K on the keyboard, and that'll break all of these individual pieces up into their own piece. Hitting V on the keyboard to get to the wireframe, all of these things become their own little pieces. So I'll just click on the ones that we don't want and delete all those. The married text, you can marquee select. You can also come up here and grab the freehand pick, which will let you lasso select, so I can lasso around this, which is nice. Then we have to decide what we want to do with this. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that, and we'll just make a new one. Okay, so we've got our pieces here that we want to keep, and so if you've got the lasso select tool set, if you hold down Control on the keyboard, then it will do the regular marquee. Otherwise it will do a lasso. But you have to remember to hold Control in order to get it to do the square box or the rectangle. I'll go back to my pick tool though, because that's what I'm used to. So I'm combining those together once I select them all. And that way they'll move together and I'll be able to outline them all together. The next thing that I'll do is, don't need that text anymore, is I'll find a set of rings to bring down in here. I'll go ahead and outline this. I'll just grab it and hit the frosted outline button. Now we see that we've got an error here. Okay, so if something happens like this where it doesn't get the contour, that means there is an error in the drawing itself. So I'll delete that contour, and then I'm going to come in here and see what's going on. Oh yeah, if we look at these, see all those little pieces that are wonky? So we've got to fix all that stuff if we want it to work correctly. There's a bunch of different ways you can fix it. You can zoom in real close and select the nodes that you don't want and start hitting delete, delete. Double clicking a node deletes it. I can delete this, and then I can join those back together, hit J. So that's one way. Another way is maybe, won't keep it a point, but it might be easier. We could just come and take our smooth tool, and this is obviously set to really big, 0.48 inches, so I'll make that smaller. Or if you hold down Shift and drag up and down, it gets bigger or smaller. I'm dragging down and it's making it bigger, dragging up, dragging down. You see how that works. So anyway, if I make that a little bit bigger, then I can just come in here and click on this. That'll smooth that out, though it's not really doing much of what I want it to do, so I guess I just have to hold it down for longer, and that'll smooth that out. It still kind of comes to a point. The longer you hold it down, the more it's going to smooth it. You can actually, if I made it really big, I could just do the whole thing at once. Just come in here and smooth all of this stuff all at the same time. As you make your strokes go back and forth, it'll smooth it out. Alright, so that's one option, I guess. So now if I try to redo this, we'll see what happens this time. Oh, look at that. Now it did it correctly. So that's good. There's little things like that that the contour tool just doesn't like, and if it can't contour, then the frosted outline button will not work because it uses contour. Contour, I also find, usually makes a few more nodes than I want it to. So after I've done a contour, I'll usually select the contour itself with the shape tool, hit Control A to select all of those nodes. We can see there's 103, and then I'll just smooth that to about 10. So it went from 103 to 61, which isn't a big deal, but every time you reduce nodes, it's a good thing, as long as it does it correctly. I also cusp them, and then I turn them back to curves so that I can easily edit them. Like this, I think it sticks out a little bit too much, so I just come in here and manually edit this kind of stuff. But that's just looking at it. I think it would just look better a little bit. Okay, so we could do the same thing with this one, or since I can see that that's just an inverted piece, I can go ahead and just delete that. Grab this one, make my copy, drag and right click, let go of the left click, then I can flip it here, and then it would be back to how we had it before. Sorry about that. Okay, so I just hit F4 and that zoomed to, which zooms to everything. And obviously there's something way out here in the middle of nowhere that's messing things up, which can actually happen with, trying to remember which tool it is. I can't remember. Anyway, to delete whatever is out here in the middle of nowhere, you can select what you want to keep, which I know is that stuff, and then hit invert selection, and that will select anything but that stuff. So if I come over to Object Manager, you'll see there's one rectangle. I don't know where it's at, but it's way out in the middle of nowhere, so I'll just hit delete. And then F4 will bring me back. Okay. So now to choose some rings to go in there. I've already got those rings. I like those pretty well. I don't really think I want to. Let's do these ones. So these rings, since we're looking at the wireframe, it's actually one ring just duplicated, one on top of the other. And that's so that if you only want one ring, you can select this one and get rid of it. Get rid of the other one, right? So anyway, we'll take those. We'll start with that. Let's bring those down in here. See if we like them. And we'll go back to regular view. Shift page up will bring everything to the front. Okay, so if we were to click again and get our rotation handles, I could rotate this a little bit. That would match more the way that the original was. I'll just rotate that just a tiny bit there. And then I can bring this back over to just about touching. It'll get pretty close there. And I'll do the same thing with this. Drag it back over. Okay. It's not too bad. If I rotate this just a little bit, it'll actually touch on both sides there, which I think I like a little bit better. Pull that up a little. Okay. And you could just leave it in pieces if you want. And rotate this one as well. Or we could weld things together. I usually leave everything in pieces because it's a lot easier in the future to make changes. We wouldn't have had to do all the breaking apart and all that sort of stuff that we did before. Had that original piece actually just been separated. So I think I'll just do it that way, and I'll leave it that way. The other one, if we remember, has a bit more black area in here. So in order to do the black area, you either have to weld or you can fake it. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to keep it in pieces, then you would fake it. An easy way to fake it is to come in and take the Smart Fill and just click inside these pieces, and then that will give you a new object that you could then, that one's really small, I don't know if it's going to work. Here we go. I'm just using my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Okay, so then I could take those red pieces that I created, combine them together, turn them black so that they are black, and usually I'll rename something like this to delete me, because I want to delete that before I actually sandblast, otherwise you're going to get double cut lines. To rename this, I came over here to the Object Manager and right-clicked on it, and then hit Rename down here. So Sorry, I didn't explain that. So that way when it comes time to plotting, I can just come in here and delete that first. Anything that says delete me. And actually, that's probably a good idea. I should make the plot page automatically delete anything that's named delete me. That'd be a good idea. Maybe I'll add that to my future feature list. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show what we'd want to do with this to get this welded. Because if I go to wireframe, you'll see all those lines intersect and all that sort of stuff, and all this stuff intersects. But because if this is the design they choose, we're going to have to weld this stuff together. I'm just going to show really quick how that would work. So we'll take all of this, and we will come to our plot page. We'll make a plot page. And it looks like we got an error up in here. I don't know where that came from, so I'll just delete that. Get rid of that there. The same thing over on this side. I think I need to clean up that file a little bit. Okay, so we got rid of that. And the next step would be welding. So to weld this together, we would take all these pieces, combine them together, shift select just the outside of the panel, and then hit weld or W. I just hit W on the keyboard because it's faster. And we do the same thing over here. Grab all those, combine them together, shift select just the outside line, and weld is this one. Okay, so now we've got these pieces here. So we've got the delete me's that we want to get rid of, so I selected those first. And then this might get a little bit tricky knowing how we want to weld all these pieces together. Also, this is the line for fitting that text to a path. It broke it apart when it brought it over to the plot page, so we can just go ahead and delete that. I believe that's when it broke it apart. Yeah, because it's still, that little red thing there will show that it's still on the path. So that broke that apart. Okay, so then what we can do is we'll take, let's just say we take these two pieces here, combine those together, and then just shift select the outside of that and weld that. Okay, and then we'll do this, shift select, let's see, yeah, we're going to have to combine all that together, so we'll combine these together, then shift select this one and weld those, and then we'll do the same thing with these, combine those two together, and so these are combined now, no, maybe they're not, never mind, so we're good. As long as those are separated, this will work. So we just take those, shift select the outside, and weld that. There we go. So we got all of our welds done. Now these pieces that we had black, we'll actually need to delete those. So if I select that and hit Control K, or go up to Object, it'll be break apart here. Once it's broken apart, you click off in the white to remove your selection, and then you can come in and delete these. That way they're going to show up black. And then we've got our panel line, so we've got to select both pieces of the panel line. I used Alt to do that. Combine that together, shift select with the outside line here, and weld that, and it welds it all the way across. I might want to go ahead and delete that one there too. So there's another thing that we can do. Since these are combined together, right? If I move them, you'll see that that's combined with the inside one. One thing that you can do is you can break it apart, so Control K will break it apart, and then you can hold Shift and click on this piece right there, and that will remove that from the selection, and then we can just combine it back together. So whatever was combined before will now be combined again, minus this piece, and then we can just hit delete on that one. So that's another trick there, is breaking things apart and then holding down Shift to deselect. I want to make sure that all this is good. Yep, we're good there. Alright, so it looks like we're all welded together. So it takes a few steps to get it to do exactly what we want it to do. You can actually probably do it a little bit quicker if you did trims and stuff, but I like having it welded so that you don't have any lines that shouldn't be there. And yeah, so that's how it would look all welded together. If we wanted to see what that would look like filled in, we could just select all this stuff again and hit fill grayscale, and you'd see what that looks like. So now you can see how that's black, that's black. But the reason I don't do this while I'm doing my design is because, just like before, we'd have to go, if we wanted to make this different, we'd have to go in and break all this stuff apart. And so it's much easier if you just leave it in pieces. Because now if I want to reuse this in the future, and we like this design, but we don't like, we like the overall design, but we don't like this piece, then we could just select all this in the middle and get rid of it. Much easier that way. Okay, so all the rest of this stuff we'll just delete. And then we've got our options.